Hi everyone and welcome back to Pokémonks. Today we take a look at 10 modern Pokémon cards that could in my opinion skyrocket in the upcoming period. And there are 3 possible reasons for that. 1. Amazing artwork, 2. Crazy PSA report, and 3. Price evolutions in the recent weeks. Now if you like this video and you want to win the Golden Mew from Celebrations, you just gotta leave a like, subscribe and tell me in the comments about your best cards you recently pulled or bought. Let's go! The first card out of the list is a Groudon from Paradox Rift. Now this card has a raw value of $30 and you can pick up this card in a PSA 10 version for $115. The PSA report shows us that there are 500 cards in a PSA 10 and a PSA 10 ratio of 53%. And this card also increased 7% in the last 3 months. Now why did I choose this card? I think the Groudon is a pretty popular Pokemon. They did an amazing job with the artwork of this card. I think 500 cards in a PSA 10 is pretty low and only a PSA 10 ratio of 53%. Number 2 on our list, I told it many times and I think the time has arrived. One of the best looking trainer gallery cards, the Umbreon VMAX out of Lost Origin. This card has a raw value of $27 and only a PSA 10 value of $75. If we take a look at the PSA report, we can see that there are 3,500 PSA 10 versions of this card and a PSA 10 ratio of 77%. This card also increased 15% in the last 3 months. Number 3 is coming out of probably one of the most underrated sets out of the Sword and Shield era, Crown Zenith. It is the big chase card Giratina VSTAR. This card has a raw value of $81 and a PSA 10 value of $146, which is pretty low for being a big chase card, being a popular Pokemon and such a good looking artwork. The PSA report shows us that there are 5,500 PSA 10 versions of this card and a PSA 10 ratio of only 57%. This card also increased 9% in the last 3 months. We all know that Crown Zenith had a big reprint, but my prediction is that Crown Zenith will increase a lot in value and interest in the upcoming period. This set has also one of the best looking card lists out of the Sword and Shield era, and this set is also the last set with yellow borders, so pretty important. Next up, the second card out of Crown Zenith, the Mewtwo VSTAR. Now this card has a raw value of $47 and a PSA 10 value of only $103, which is pretty low in my opinion, being such a good artwork and such a popular Pokemon. If we take a look at the PSA report, it shows us that there are 6,800 PSA 10 versions of this card with a PSA 10 ratio of 68%, and this card didn't increase or decrease in the last 3 months. And now we are entering the big opportunities in my opinion, probably one of the best looking artworks out of the Scarlet and Violet era yet, the Tyranitar out of Paldea Evolved. Now this card has only a raw value of $19 and a PSA 10 value of $146. There are only 154 cards in a PSA 10, which is absolutely mind-blowing, and only a PSA 10 ratio of 16%. Now having such a crazy PSA report, being such a popular Pokemon, having such a great artwork, I think this card in a PSA 10 for only $146 is pretty crazy. Next up, the second card out of Paldea Evolved, the Sleeping Raichu, with a raw value of $24 and a PSA 10 value of $195. There are only 131 PSA 10 versions of this card and a PSA 10 ratio of 18%. This card increased 41% in the last 3 months. Next up is the big chase card out of Brilliant Stars, the beautiful Charizard V. Now this card increased 22% in the last 3 months, and I can say finally, because this card was way undervalued in the last year. This card has a raw value of $142 and a PSA 10 version is going for $248. The PSA report shows us that there are 8,500 PSA 10 versions of this card with a PSA 10 ratio of 56%. Next up is a beautiful Beedrill V out of Astral Radiance. Now I know Astral Radiance has been hot big news in the last couple of weeks with being out of stock, then back in stock on the Pokemon Center. But besides that, I think the Beedrill V with a raw value of $23 and a PSA 10 value of only $65 is a pretty good steal. The PSA report shows us that there are 1,700 PSA 10 versions of this card, a PSA 10 ratio of 61%, and now this card increased 22% in the last 3 months. Next up, we got the big chase card out of Silver Tempest, the beautiful Lugia V. Now this card has a raw value of $177, increased 48% in the last 3 months. A PSA 10 of this card is going for $330. The PSA report shows us that there are 7,800 PSA 10 versions of this card and a PSA 10 ratio of 60%. Now, because this is such a popular Pokemon, being the big chase card out of Silver Tempest, such a beautiful artwork, I think $330 in a PSA 10 is still worth it to pick up this card. And then last but not least, such a crazy card, the Magikarp out of Paldea Evolved. This card is going for $100 in a raw version and $550 in a PSA 10 version. I have so many questions. What is this card going to do on the long but also on the short term? I think $550 for this card is absolutely crazy, but the PSA report shows us that there are only 565 PSA 10 versions of this card and a PSA 10 ratio of only 22%. And this card increased 50% in the last 3 months. So I'm really curious, let me know in the comments, do you think that this Magikarp out of Paldea Evolved can become the new Umbreon from the Scarlet and Violet era? And there you have it, 10 cards I would invest in right now. Now, if you like this video and you want to win the Golden Mew from Celebrations, you just gotta leave a like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments about your recent pulls or buys out of the Pokemon TCG. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.